Spanning the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, represents a significant force on the global stage, encompassing one-third of the world's population, more than half of global trade, and over 60% of global GDP. This past week, the Peruvian capital of Lima became the focal point of the world as leaders, senior officials, and business executives from APEC's 21 member economies came together.
Sustainable growth for resilient development is one of APEC's priorities this year.
Bringing leaders from these 21 world economies together, it's also about bringing the private sector.
Climate change, the energy, the very urgent energy transition, poverty in many nations, and we can't address...
At the 31st APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, Chinese President Xi Jinping addressed the pressing challenges to Asia-Pacific cooperation, from rising geopolitical tensions to the growing sway of unilateralism and protectionism.
Bueno, el presidente Xi Jinping ayer dijo una frase.
Well, I think it was a message that we were expecting because China has been promoting openness to our market, to our region.
His speech was really inspiring because he's telling the world that China wants a free trade, a global trade.
In this episode, I'm joined by my colleague Huang Fei to break down how this series of high-stakes meetings could influence not only the region, but the trajectory of the global economy and much more. It's Monday, November 18th. The weather looks pretty sunny and warm in Lima, and just so you know, the temperature have been dipping in Beijing over the past few days. And so, Huang Fei, how did you enjoy your reporting in Lima this time?
It's interesting that you mentioned the sun. When I got here the first day, I had a shoot at a local archaeological site. And the guide told me that you guys are really lucky because usually it's overcast. We really rarely get the sun. So, but once you guys are here, the sun comes out and it's beautiful. So we were able to get some really nice shots. So that's a cool cool little opening to our experience here. But overall, I feel Lima is quite clean. It's orderly. Before we came here, we were told that we should watch out for safety issues. Perhaps there were strikes. There might be pickpocketing. So we were prepared for that. But once we got here, it's actually pretty safe. And it's clean. And obviously, we see all these signs about APEC. And there is definitely a sense of openness, of positivity. People are here to talk business, to talk cooperation. So yeah, it's a great environment and atmosphere.
So despite the warning, it's been a pretty smooth trip, and the sky even cleared up for this summit. And it's also been 8 years since President Xi Jinping's visit to Peru, and on this trip, he's made a handful of Spanish quotes from the South American country. And during your visit to Lima, did you see any overlapping cultures between China and Peru?
Absolutely. I mean, in President Xi's article, he mentioned the word chifa, which is, basically translated from the Chinese word 吃饭. And chifa, we saw that everywhere. And, this is the word for the restaurants, right? When I went out to interview people in reaction to President Xi's article that came out on the eve of his arrival, people were telling me that they were happy to read about President Xi's references about the cultural connections. And they were very impressed that our president knows so much about Peruvian culture, not just the modern connections, but also the ancient cultures, the Incas, for instance. So people from the grassroots to even the vice minister of tourism that I talked to yesterday were very impressed that President Xi was very spot on about these cultural connections. I went to a Chinese park yesterday. It was built by the Chinese community, for the Chinese community, but it was so busy that they were saying to me that sometimes they had to close the park in the afternoon and do some crowd control because it was just so busy. And people were greeting us in Chinese and saying hi and being welcome. So yeah, it's great.
So China and Peru, they do share quite a lot of cultural common grounds. But of course, this group, APEC, is more focused on addressing economic issues. And President Xi said that this vast Pacific Ocean has not kept China and Latin America apart. And China has seen some exponential growth on its trade volume between many South American countries. And with economic ties between these two regions growing stronger, especially with the launching of the Shanghai port a few days ago, what does the future hold for their economic partnership?
Well, the future looks really, really bright. I mean, for the people here in Peru, with the opening of the Shanghai port, I was speaking to some people that tell me that they have many friends in that area, many friends from Shanghai. And this new port is really going to put that area on the map as a global shipping hub, because we're talking about a massive port that covers an area of 140 hectares of land. The sheer scale of it, the fact that it's a deep water port and it's able to accommodate some of the world's largest carriers, it's really going to transform the local economy. And one scholar told me that there are reports that BYD is thinking of building an assembly plant there. So, we've got the world's largest serve EVs looking to do some business there. And the fact that it's the first smart port there is also going to transform the local workforce. In addition to that, lowering logistics costs, and also, the fact that it can help ships bypass a stopover in North America, just really making trade a lot easier. And people are also mentioning the fact that this giant infrastructure project is done in a way that respects biodiversity. So they've got initiatives that protects the wildlife, and they're working with the local government, the Minister of Tourism, to create a new plan for tourism. So it's not just economic opportunities, but also this is going to increase people-to-people ties between China and Peru. So it's a very, very great project for the locals.
Sustainable growth. And President Xi introduced that the CPC aims to accomplish more than 300 targets over the next 5 years. And how will China's economic prosperity reflect on the development of APEC and as well as the global economy?
In terms of the Chinese economic prosperity and the Chinese developmental philosophy, President Xi mentioned reform and opening up, China's commitment to innovation and sustainability and inclusive growth. And all of this resonate very well with Peru or other developing nations here at APEC. In terms of Peru, they're really trying to transform the so-called informal economy to a global one, by supporting micro, small, and medium enterprises. They also have a vast rural community, indigenous communities from the highlands, from the basins. These entrepreneurs who are, in a lot of cases, women entrepreneurs, are looking for venture capital or opportunities to develop, to turn their, heritage into businesses. And there's huge potential for that. And they're learning from China's model and developing their rural economy and their informal economy to have a global impact using digitization. And so, definitely China's developmental model is something that is being talked about here in APEC.
So inclusive growth for people regardless of their backgrounds. And as President Xi pointed out, the founding of APEC was near the end of Cold War, and the group thrived over the past 3 decades as the world became increasingly interconnected. But now it faces new challenges from geopolitics and protectionism. And in a time like this, how should APEC explore a new path for economic growth?
The trend of deglobalization is a big focus of discussions here. And I did put that question to panelists on the CEO summit. Notably, Indonesia is, basically caught in a tug of war between China and the US in this, geopolitical tussle, because they're heavily invested in EVs And in critical minerals, they're seeking cooperation basically from both sides. But what they're telling us is that the China plus one strategy is a great one, not just for foreign companies, but also for Chinese companies as well, because we're seeing a lot of reshoring from Chinese firms to Southeast Asia. They're establishing part of their supply chains there, and they're bringing their expertise in refining these critical minerals, for example, for EVs. And this is very much welcomed by Indonesia. So this is one way to I guess, find a new path for growth is to embrace the so-called China plus one strategy. It's not decoupling, but it's just diversifying your supply chain.
And that probably reflects the core principles of APEC, which is collaboration and innovation. Thank you very much for your time, Huang Fei.
Thank you for having me.
Founded at the tail end of the Cold War, APEC emerged during a time of profound geopolitical and economic transformation. Over the decades, it has grown into a cornerstone of global economic collaboration and a vital platform for addressing shared challenges. As the Asia-Pacific region confronts escalating geopolitical tensions, the rise of protectionism, and an urgent call for sustainability, APEC's role in fostering cooperation and driving innovation has never been more critical, and the vision of building an Asia-Pacific with a shared future has never been more urgent. That brings us to the end of this episode of Deep Dive. If you enjoyed what you just heard, don't forget to follow us on your podcast platforms. Just search for Deep Dive. You can also leave comments to let us know what you want to learn about China and beyond. This episode is brought to you by me, Li Yunqi, and my colleagues Zhang Zhang and Qi Zhi. Special thanks to CGTN reporter Huang Fei. I'll see you in the next one.